Hi Isabel, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
Getting ready for another move.
Another move, yeah. Speaking of moves, you've moved a lot everywhere. We've been moving to similar places, or our families have been sort of merging in the same place in and out throughout time in various locations. Can you tell me a bit about yourself, where you're from? Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Our families have been overlapping in multiple different countries, which I think it's really cool. I think we'll still continue to overlap in the future. So I'm half Mexican, half Swedish,
Mm-hmm.
and I grew up in multiple countries, but I think the one I lived the longest was in Mexico, where we met.
How
And
long?
I lived in Mexico almost 7 years, and maybe not consecutively, but a few years. Then we left to Sweden and we came
Mm-hmm.
back. So I do speak Spanish as my first language.
Mm-hmm. So you're half Mexican, half Swedish, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I have a Mexican accent in my Swedish. And sometimes I also construct my sentences as if I'm speaking Spanish, but I think it's okay.
Yeah.
So
And then you moved to so you lived 7 years in Mexico, and then you moved to.
I was actually I was born in Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
Then we left to the UK and we lived a
Mm-hmm.
couple of years in the
Really?
UK where
In
my
London.
no, in Preston.
Okay.
That's where my sister's born.
Okay.
So in Preston, then we moved to
Where's Preston exactly?
close to Blackpool.
Where's Blackpool?
So you have London, and then let's say all the way here, Edinburgh. So in the middle, in
Ah,
between. Yeah,
okay. Wow. Okay.
yeah. So a small little town.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad was working there as an engineer,
Okay.
and then we moved to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Mexico, my brother was born. So all of the three of us are born in different countries, which I
Okay.
think is cool.
Cool.
And then in Mexico, we were there for several, yeah, let's say 4 years, give and take. And then we moved to Sweden,
Mm-hmm.
back to Mexico, and then we moved to the U.S. where we did our high school experience.
Still with the family. Okay.
Still everything with the family. All of this was with my parents.
Where in the U.S.?
To Colorado.
Okay.
And then the year I graduated from high school, my parents were moving to Dallas,
Okay.
but I moved to Sweden to kind of like get that immersion back in the Swedish culture, just so I could see what it's all about. And
High school or university?
so that's like university. So I
Okay.
graduated high school in the U.S., moved to Sweden for university, and I had a great time, but I was having a bit of difficulties with academic Swedish.
Yeah.
So I talked to the counselor, and then they recommended for me to move to Denmark because the Lund University and Aarhus University had a bit of a deal where that you could easily transfer stuff.
Okay.
So
So you went to Sweden in Lund, which is in southern Sweden. Then you moved over to Copenhagen, or
to
no,
Aarhus,
Aarhus. Aarhus. That's in
yeah,
the north of Denmark, right?
and yeah,
Northeast.
yeah. So in Jylland, so like the big peninsula.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jutland in English.
yeah.
Jutland. Yeah.
Jutland,
How
Jylland,
do
yeah,
how do you
Jylland
say
and
it?
in Danish, no?
Okay. Yeah.
So maybe yeah, Jutland. I think
In English.
in English.
Yeah.
I'll have
Okay.
to
So
fact check me on there.
that I didn't know. So you went to Aarhus.
Yeah,
Okay. You.
I lived there for like the first 2 years of my bachelor's.
Mm-hmm.
Then I moved to Brussels,
Yeah. Wow.
which I loved. Absolutely, a lot of fun.
For studying or
Just the 6 months, just the internship.
internship. Okay.
Yeah,
At the EU or.
it was fair trade. So, but it was more kind of the organization that deals with the ensuring that some of the policies in the EU also consider fair trade.
Okay.
So we're all fair trade organization.
So it was like a lobbying organization towards the EU for fair trade lobbying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then let's say, then where did I go? No, then I went back to Denmark just to finish like my bachelor's.
Mm-hmm.
And then I left to Copenhagen to do like part of like the master's, but also work in the Mexican embassy
Okay.
for like the another kind of internship, then to Vienna, and then to Hamburg.
Then you went to Vienna, right?
Mm-hmm. Where we are now.
Yes, where we are now, by the way. We're in Vienna.
We're in Vienna, yeah, to Vienna, and absolutely loved it. But I never thought about coming back until we had the opportunity, which was 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But in between there, we've been moving because I found my partner, and he started like following me as well. So we lived in Hamburg for a bit.
So your partner moved with you to Hamburg, not to Vienna. You both went to Hamburg.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because for visa purposes, it wasn't as easy for him to move to Denmark. So he found a master's in Hamburg.
Okay.
So we're like, okay, I'll finish my thesis there, and we'll both live in Hamburg. Then we'll try to figure out where we go next.
And not Vienna because?
Because I think it was because I was trying to figure out the consultancy here for the UN, but unfortunately, like the project fell through. So then he got this master's program that made a lot of sense with his like studies. So we're like, it just made sense for us like, to be able to be together.
Okay. So. All right, and then Hamburg, and then to continue this life path slash moving around story. After Hamburg, you both decided to go to
Copenhagen.
Copenhagen. I thought it was already Vancouver. Okay, first Copenhagen.
Yeah, and we couldn't figure out the visa for him.
Okay.
We also hadn't been together for so long, so I couldn't sponsor him.
Okay.
And yeah, I guess for Copenhagen, we had to have lived together for over 3 years, which we didn't.
Wow. Okay.
And so then we tried Sweden for a year, and then we got rejected for the relationship visa because, again, we hadn't had enough time together, and economically, because we were students, we didn't have the...
Right, you were both still students.
Yeah, so we didn't have the means to prove to the government that we were going to be, I don't know, whatever they needed to...
Contributing to society, and not like a fake couple.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I mean, we had our studies and everything, but anyways. Yeah. So then we decided, okay, if neither Denmark or Sweden is accepting us, then let's go to Vancouver.
Yeah.
Because Cody's Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in Canada for, I think, a little bit over 4 years.
Yeah. So that was another long period of time.
Yeah.
So there was Mexico 7 years, Vancouver 4 years, and one of the other places in between. Was any of them long?
Well, I think the UK was 4 years, but to be fair, it was when I was like a really young kid.
Really young. Okay.
And then Denmark, give and take, you could say it's 5 years. It's just that I did the internships in between.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
And then, yeah, so I think that's why, as much as I love Denmark, I feel I never invested too much in the language one. I could get by with Swedish and as well with like English.
Yeah.
But because I was in and out, yeah, I feel like that's where one part that I feel like I should have like invested a little bit more.
Yeah.
In Danish.
But your Swedish is Southern Swedish, which is a bit
right? Like Danish.
Like Skåne is supposed to be dialect that is the closest to Danish out of all the Swedish.
It used to belong to Denmark, the southern part. So, but to be fair, my family has that like strong Skånska accent, but it's myself like a bit like more the Mexican Swedish, and it works.
Okay.
But yeah, and then Vancouver, amazing place to live in.
Yeah.
Super far away from everything.
Yeah.
Hence why we returned to Europe, because that dynamic that you can be in multiple countries, meet people from different parts of the world. I mean, Vancouver is diverse, but you don't have that liberty of like moving around.
It's very isolated.
Yeah.
And then after Vancouver, you decided to move to Vienna.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And now you've been here and I was quite surprised how fast time goes by, but for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's crazy, actually.
So it's just like, I still remember the first time when we were moving to Vienna, not the first time like several years ago, but once we were back,
mm-hmm.
And I found out that you, through your sister, that you were still living in Vienna. So I was like, oh my God, okay, contacting you. And one of the apartments that we were looking at, which is this one, is not too far away from you.
Yeah.
And it's
basically the same street.
Yeah. Our neighbors.
After living in Mexico, going to the same school in Mexico, years later, in literally the same street across the world.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
If you think about it, our families have overlap. Okay, yeah, we all met in Mexico. Then your sister and I were slightly at the same time in Sweden. Then you were in the same time as my sister in Hong Kong.
Yeah, and in Colombia.
Yeah. And then, although, because when I was living in Belgium, it's not that your sister was living in Belgium, but she would go and visit. So I got this opportunity to go and see your family's house.
Okay.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. I was probably there, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe, yeah, because didn't we play board games? Maybe it was with
Could
you.
Be.
No.
And then now you're here in Austria.
Yeah.
Now you'll move back to Sweden, right? That's the last part of the story.
Yeah, we're moving back to Sweden because now our love has finally been approved. So we're both allowed to. Well, Cody's allowed to live in Sweden. So maybe it's 10 years in the making of being able to get that relationship approved.
10 years.
Yeah, because we've been over 10 years together. And if you think about it, the first year of our relationship, we were in Hamburg. Then we tried Copenhagen. Okay, maybe, the visa game has been like 10 years. But now we're going to finally moved back to Sweden. So then we can figure out, anything that's needed for the future.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm trying to do with these videos is to sort of explore some of these cities that are often rated as like, hey, cool cities to live in for expats or for foreigners or even locals, and to see what people think about the cities. And I think you've lived in a lot of cities that keep popping up, at least for expats, like Mexico City is really up and coming right now. In particular, Vancouver has always been one of these most livable cities. And then Vienna is also one of these ultra, I would also say it's really up and coming, but it's also always considered one of the most livable cities. And I was wondering, it would be interesting to see your perspective since you've moved a lot more than I have to all these different countries and really cool cities, what your opinions are of those, let's say those three, or if you think, hey, I would also want to rate Copenhagen because I have experience with Copenhagen, or Stockholm, though I don't think you've lived in Stockholm, right? No,
not Stockholm. I was born there, but that's only the first year of my life. But no, you're right, because if you think about it, as you said, Vancouver, Vienna, and Copenhagen are always like in the top.
Yeah.
I must admit, all three of them are insanely well. I think it's easy to live in those cities. And I don't mean it if like, okay, it's bad weather, people sometimes can be a cold, but the structure works. You know that you can easily bike around. You can know that you have like this kind of 15-minute city where you can easily walk to your supermarket. You can easily walk to the bank. You can reach out to doctors if needed. And because of the social health care, you don't have to pay like a vast amount of money in if something happens, knock on wood. But I think in that sense, it's an easy place to live. I think we've also been fortunate because I think the three cities have really shown us that you're capable, even as an international, to get like a good job. At least that has been from our experience. Okay, sometimes you have to struggle a little bit, like maybe you don't have the best position to start with, but I mean, knowing your skills and your way to encourage certain projects, that advancement can happen quickly. And we've loved that risk, but love the ability of what can we be in each city. And lucky enough as well, the friends that we have received in every single city are amazing, and they make it feel very homey. How to choose among the three? I must admit, Vancouver, I loved the city itself when it came to nature because you have the ocean, you can swim so easily, that you can go hiking, you can go skiing like within 30 minutes.
That's crazy.
It's you don't get that opportunity in Vienna or in, I mean, yeah, okay, in Vienna you can go 1 hour away for skiing.
Yeah.
And you have nature's path, but because it's a landlocked country, yeah, you can go to the Danube to swim. But something about having the mountains like literally right there make you kind of like ground you every day. Like,
Yeah. So you could see the mountains from your apartment.
yeah,
Or...
it's like every morning I could see
Yeah.
the ocean, and then I could see the mountains, and then sometimes like it was super snowy. So I think in that aspect, the surroundings, Vancouver for sure
beats all the others.
beats all. But Vienna beats every single one of them when it comes to savings.
Oh yeah, yeah.
No, you cannot have this kind of apartment in Copenhagen nor in Vancouver, because Vancouver we lived in a studio, amazing view, but we lived in a studio because it's insanely expensive.
Do you remember how many square meters it was? Or do they work in square meters or feet?
I must admit, I don't recall it that much, but let's take into consideration. So this circle,
yeah,
times 3.
Wow, that's
so
tiny.
It's tiny. So yeah,
that's tiny.
You can see that we had the bed. We had a Murphy bed.
What is that? That is like 10 or 20 square meters, maybe.
Yeah, it was small, but it had a balcony. So, and then you could have an insane view.
Yeah, explain what a Murphy bed is. I don't know per se, but you've already told me what it is by describing the bed. What is a Murphy bed?
So in order to save space, we had the Murphy bed. So it locks into the wall. So during the day, it was a couch.
Yeah.
And then during the night, it would go down, and yeah, the couch would be hidden, and then we had our bed.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, it's great because then it feels like you have to tidy the room every day. I mean, you should, but
it was like a routine. Yeah. It was like a routine.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm assuming you were renting in a pretty nice area.
Yeah.
I guess.
We were in downtown Vancouver in English Bay. So you have basically the finance district, the old district. English Bay is literally right next to Stanley Park. So it's like this massive park that you would run around 10 kilometers.
Okay.
Perfect. You see seals every day.
I might have been there when I visited Vancouver. Might be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it have like these Indian totem poles?
Or yeah, that's on the other side. And then the side that we were living in, they had these statues. Oh, I forgot the artist, but basically it's these bronze statues, laughing statues. It's very recognizable. If I could show you a photo, you would be like, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But in that sense, okay, yeah, you get one city, amazing for nature, any kind of incredible hike.
And did you do that? Did you actually use the nature?
A lot. Especially Stanley Park, because it was literally around us. So if you wanted to just go for a run, it was the easiest way to be, okay, start the run. You can't come back. You have to go all the way around, and you see the mountains and the water, and then skiing just being so close.
So you had an own car, I guess.
No? We had Evo, which is basically a car share.
Okay.
And then you can just rent it out wherever you see it on the street, and then drop it as long as it's within the areas that you're allowed to drop it.
But like you could use it to go for a hike and then come back.
Yeah.
Or to go skiing and then come back.
Yeah, and even it had like the rails for the skiing.
Okay, wow.
So yeah, I think in that sense, like the city also was prepared for ensuring that you could easily move around. And then in Vienna, coming back to Vienna, the fact that you can get beautiful apartments. Okay, yeah, they're older. Some of them, like this one, is older than the First World War.
Yeah.
And you sometimes see the photos in museums of the building.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty cool.
It's a very nice apartment. I like this little area where we're in here. It's like a little move the camera. It's like a little alcove within the apartment overlooking the street. There you can see it, the street right there, and the church is in the background. It's not focusing, but very, very nice and hip area as well. I mean, to give you context, I'm not sure exactly where the location was in Vancouver. I'm guessing it was quite central, but here we are literally 10 minutes walk
to any bar
into the city center,
Yeah.
right? So if you work in the city center like I do, we don't live far away, Isabel and we can basically just walk to work. Although I don't know how close your
40 minutes
40-minute walk, yeah.
But I love it.
Yeah.
You can take I take the U-Bahn or the tram in the morning if I'm running late.
Yeah.
Which sometimes, but
Nah.
it's the Latin in me. But anyways, yeah, and then walk. But I mean, I think you can walk anywhere in Vienna.
Yeah, super easy.
Super easy.
You can even walk to the hills over there, like the Tiergarten. I've already done it a couple of times. It's a nice walk from here to there. Then you see all the different districts. But these central areas, like here, we're in the 7th.
Yeah.
And across the street, so the building behind the Isabel on the other side is the 8th.
Yeah.
And so this area has a lot of bars, a lot of things to do in the evening. This street is every evening. There's so many people, right? Because all these hip bars and restaurants.
There's even if you think about it, not just the restaurants, but a lot of the art galleries as well.
True.
Like yesterday, I was passing by, and I'm not too sure what the art gallery was celebrating, but they had like a little boombox outside, and people were just drinking glühwein.
Did you go?
No, because there was too many people, and I
would have expected you to go.
Yeah, but I was going to the Christmas market. That's not too far away from us. So, and I think the fact that it's so central is a reason that a lot of people have come and visit us here.
Yeah.
They can easily stay with us and then go around, walk around, and decide what to do and not get lost.
Yeah.
I think it's not an overwhelming city to get lost.
It's like, it's very, totally not overwhelming. 2 million person city, but it feels very, like you can't really get lost. It's walkable everywhere. You have like the ring, super easy.
Yeah.
You just follow the Rathaus Tower and you always know where the center is.
Yeah, I think that's to be fair, compared to Vancouver and Copenhagen, I felt that this city was the most walkable. And although both other cities are also walkable, I feel Vienna gets that prize. Likewise, that I'll give it to Copenhagen, because I think since it's such an old city, they're still trying to figure out how to integrate the bike path
here
in Vienna.
Mm-hmm.
But in Copenhagen, I think that they have really prioritized to ensure that biking is accessible everywhere.
Yeah.
So.
And so you were saying, okay, nature, Vancouver is by far the winner.
Yeah.
Maybe Vienna is second and Copenhagen third, or is Vienna third and Copenhagen second?
For nature? Or for
for like nature and activities, nature-related activities?
I might put, I think, nature. If it's just like nature, Vancouver, then maybe Vienna and then Copenhagen, just because you do have the accessibility to go hiking.
Yeah.
And Denmark being flat is kind of rough to do. I mean, you can do long walkways, but not the same amount, not that majestic feeling with like huge mountains.
Yeah.
I mean, they do have beautiful nature.
Yeah.
But when it comes economically, Vienna overpasses all of them.
Yeah.
As much as you can make nice salaries in both Vancouver and Denmark, Vienna, even with a decent salary, you save quite a bit of money.
Yeah, because I understand you took quite a salary cut moving to Vienna.
Yeah.
Both you and Cody took quite a big salary cut, but at the end, even though you were living in a flat that was 1/4 the size of this one, or smaller even, it's economically still easier to save here.
Yeah. Yes.
Like a lot.
A lot. It's
I
crazy.
see the enthusiasm in your face.
Yes, a lot. No, but it's because maybe, think about it, like, I also go out a lot. So I do spend quite a bit of money when it comes to socials.
That's true.
I might not be the person that spends a lot on clothes, but socials, if it's going to taste different food, go to an experience for an event or traveling, that's where my money normally gets liquidated.
Yeah. Side note, I think Isabel is a person I know who travels the most every weekend potentially, or does the most activities at least.
Social butterfly.
Social butterfly, exactly.
Yeah. But and even in that sense, because I think Vancouver's nightlife closes at 2 or 1:30, depending the situation.
Okay.
Even 12, sometimes some bars close at 12 and you're like, what's going on here?
A bar?
Okay. Yeah, bar. Yeah.
Is that like a rule or by law? Or?
Yeah, it's like because their alcohol is kind of like a monopoly.
Okay. Like in Sweden, no?
Yeah, like in Sweden. So yeah, they have different rules, and certain bars like buy certain licenses.
Okay.
Also, culturally, they don't go out as much as Europeans. Spaniards, where they go to a nightclub or like
a bar at 2 or 3.
Not that I'm in like a nightclub phase of my life anymore, but
you are in the bar phase.
Yeah, I'm in a bar phase. Yeah. I'm like, let's go hopping, let's continue, and I'm feeling it. I do. So I feel in Vancouver, like if you go for a glass of wine, you can end up sometimes paying for that glass of wine in between 15 to 18 Canadian dollars.
How much? That's like almost the same in euros, or like 10 euros.
Depends, because you can also 10 euros, but then or maybe like 12 euros. I'm trying to think. And
do they also add the VAT afterwards, like in the US? Like 20% afterwards. That $10 was actually $13.
Yeah, and then the tips as well.
Yeah, the tips, which is
25 the last time.
25%,
which is quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then here, if you can find like good little places where your glass of wine could still be around 5 euros.
Yeah.
So
and that's
in a decent glass of wine.
And that's in the city center.
Yeah. Or when you go to a Hurrigan.
Yeah, a Hurrigan.
Yeah.
So what's a Hurrigan? A Hurrigan is like a vineyard that you have everywhere in Austria, or most of Austria, at least in this region for sure. And you can buy wine for super cheap from the farmer.
Yeah, super cheap. And so in that sense, that kind of going out and having great quality of products that you're consuming, even though they're cheaper, Vienna will take it over Denmark and Vancouver.
Okay. Like, how big is the difference? Like, do you save money in Vancouver? Is it? But you were also starting your career, no?
Yeah, I mean, I started my career in Sweden.
Okay.
But it was kind of like slowly growing in Vancouver. But I still think we did save in Vancouver, but not to the same extent. If I just had to kind of take into accountability what was the budget coming in, both from Cody and I's salary.
Yeah.
And then...
Which was a good salary.
Yeah, it was a good salary. And then now, the rent was taking a lot. Even the studio with a great view, I think it was like 2,500 Canadian monthly, which was quite a bit for a studio.
It's probably more than double what you're paying here.
Exactly. Because here we're paying like 1,000, so you're like, what?
1,000 for 5 times more space and more central.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in that sense, if you start taking all those little things that contribute to where your salary is going, and then going out was a little bit more expensive in Vancouver, and then going out was also like grocery shopping was also more expensive in Vancouver. You did have more variety though.
More variety.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is something that I do miss as well, having moved to Vienna, which I notice less now. But I think at least compared to Belgium, the supermarkets, granted, they're very small because we're in the city, right? They're tiny, tiny, tiny little supermarkets. Every 3-minute walk, you bump into a tiny supermarket. But yeah, you have less products, I guess.
Yeah, like I do. I mean, I found now here in Vienna, the stores, Casa Mexico, saved my life with all the Latin products. Prosi also. Or sometimes when you go to Nashmark, You can find like plantains or kale that you don't find in regular grocery stores.
Yeah.
But it's an extra trip.
Yes.
Which is, it's okay. Like, you just have to figure out your patterns.
Yeah, these specialized supermarkets are able to survive in Vienna.
I am interested now because I lived in Copenhagen as a student. Although I was working at the Mexican embassy, I was still an intern, so it's not necessarily that I had a budget.
Yeah.
But I would like to see how it is now going out as an adult or with a proper job. Because back then it was a lot about like hanging out with friends at parks. We would grab like a couple of bottles of wine and create like a whole picnic, or just go swimming or be at the beach.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like whenever I go and visit, yeah, of course we go out to restaurants, but is that like an everyday life? Because I think here in Vienna we've been spoiled that we do go every week at least to a couple of restaurants.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's very easy here to do that. Yeah. You don't really. Yeah, it's all doable. Yeah. And you don't neither of you speak German, right? And you both found good jobs.
Yeah, good job.
You in the food and beverage industry, and Cody in the
internet urban planning.
Yeah, urban planning.
Yeah.
I guess Vienna and Vancouver are good cities for urban planning because they're so into urban planning.
Yeah. Also, Copenhagen will be also good for urban planning.
Also think so. Yeah. Also think so. I have a friend who lives in Copenhagen, and he lives in a district down south in the old harbor where they built new buildings. Yeah. And it looks really cool because in the morning people go swimming in the canals.
Is it like Islandsbrygge?
Could be.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I saw a lot of the cool. I mean, last time I went there this summer, and so many cool new districts are popping. We're not going to be living because now we're moving to Sweden. Yeah. We're not going to be living in Copenhagen, but we're not too far away. We're 30 minutes away. Yeah. So we are going to be looking for jobs both in Copenhagen and in Malmö. Yeah. And see where it gets, like whoever hires us with the field that we want to. Yeah. So any recommendations of like how not to miss Vienna so much, because I think it'll be a hard one. I think I will miss it. Yeah. Weather-wise, how would you compare the three? I think Copenhagen completely loses. Weather-wise, I mean, they have like a great summer, but January, February, awful. I think Vienna is not too far from what the weather is in Vancouver, but Vienna wins because the good thing is that Vienna is so easy accessible by so many different countries. The night train, you can take a night train to Rome, you can take a night train to Brussels, to Paris, Zagreb, like... To where, to? Zagreb. Zagreb, yeah. Yeah, and then you can go from there to Trieste. Like, I don't know, there's so many places that you can go from Vienna that I think over that, maybe Vienna wins weather-wise, because you can also, in case you need to, go somewhere sunny. Yeah, coming from Belgium, which I think is more comparable to Copenhagen / Denmark, I think that the weather here is amazing. I mean, yes, now it's not nice, it's winter. Yeah. The winters are colder than in Belgium and Denmark, and it snows more, but at least it doesn't rain all the time. Yeah, sure. That's the big difference. The rain is just horrible in Belgium, like all the time. Yeah. People complain here about the wind, but I don't think I've had it. Maybe because we live in the center. Yeah. So it's not that easy, or you're protected by the buildings. Yeah, I think if you're more on the eastern / northern side of Vienna, where you are looking towards Slovakia and Hungary, then you probably get more of those winds because it comes across this like Pannonian plain. Like all of Hungary is really flat because it used to be a sea a long time ago. That's why you still have the Neusiedler. Yeah, that's true. Because it's so flat and low, and then the wind just accelerates a lot and it hits Vienna. And in Vienna it ends because we have the end of the Alps here. Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, I love that yesterday was snowing a little bit. Was it? Yes. It looks so cool. Or the day before, yes. And it looks so cool, like it was, I don't know, with we have a fireplace, so it gets like this cozy feeling, very, I don't know, like being in the city. So
Yeah.
weather-wise, I mean, to be fair, all of them slightly similar, but Denmark still loses.
Yeah.
And I think that we can talk about like friendships, because I think although all those three cities are considered the best cities in the world to live in according to these rankings,
Yeah.
every everybody seems to always comment like it's hard to make friends,
Yes.
in it's particular in these cities, because people by culture they're also quite cold. But
Also Canadians?
I think they're really nice but in order to get into like that niche of
Yeah.
like friends, it is work.
Okay.
But in all the three of the cities, I've experienced having like the group of friends of like we're Canadians in Vancouver, Austrians here, or Danish in Denmark. I think if you're willing to get rejected and put the work of like, hey, they might not be into inviting you directly. Once you get it and crack that coconut, because I do think they're a little bit like coconuts, I think it's easy to really be friends, and then you have friends for life.
So you have local native friends in each of the three countries. You managed to make also Austrian friends here in Vienna?
Which helped us a lot as well, because a lot of the documentation
Oh yeah.
is in German.
Yeah.
And
only German.
only German. Oh my god, yeah. I think Cody has really focused on like learning German, but he's not in like the fluent level just yet, but he's in a great standard at the moment. But he wouldn't have been able to get there unless he had like a friend to like talk to, or at work to talk to, or even when we struggle with certain governmental documentation, that we could easily reach out to our friends like, please, can you look over even our work contracts, just everything in German. And I was like, oh, okay, we do need friends who are local and can tell us how to do things.
I think, yeah, I was a bit shocked as well when I moved here, but at the end it was very shocked by how you really need German to even in the supermarket, you know, if you say, I don't know, like I think in Belgium they understand English, the cashiers, most of them, probably in Denmark and Sweden as well.
Yeah.
But here you do have to speak German for the basics, I think. Which is good because it made me learn German. So that's also fun. Yeah, it forces you.
It forces you. Yeah, that's the reality is, I think, in between both Vancouver and Copenhagen, it's harder to feel integrated at home in Vienna in the long term if you don't really start focusing or prioritizing a little bit more on the German aspect. But there is kind of free classes. I think the government also gives you a bit of a stipendium, and then sometimes Cody's work was paying for his German classes.
Yeah.
So that helped a lot for him.
And in Denmark, like if you would, let's say, move to Copenhagen, would you be accepted at some point, you think? I mean, you speak Swedish, so you could probably learn Danish more easily.
Get free classes as well.
Okay.
Lærere dansk. And in Denmark, what happened, I really wanted to test a little bit of like how to convert Swedish or English to Danish. So I found this, I was on the university's Facebook back then. I was like, oh, I want to talk to someone exchanging Danish for Spanish or whatever you want. And I found Alan, who's Danish, and we became really good friends, and we would meet like twice a week at the student bar, trying to talk about the differences in between our languages and understand like simple sentences. So when he would go travel Latin America, he could like participate. And then myself as well, when I would go to a Danish party, and if I want to be part of the conversation, how can I be part of it?
Yeah.
Although I wasn't perfect, just to kind of like listen and understand what's going on made me feel a lot more comfortable. And Alan afterwards went ahead and invented an app based on those like tandem interactions, so that you could find people to be a tandem with. So kind of like so you could easily figure out how to like learn Danish by finding another Dane. and then it went ahead after the pandemic to even like evolve, now giving you personalized teachers who are Danish. So only from that interaction, he like
Wow.
developed his whole company called Swap Language.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So if anyone wants to
Learn
learn Danish, there's an app called Swap Language.
Yeah, he's doing good. He's a startup, but it's good. But yeah, it's funny.
But these apps and companies really went crazy good since COVID.
Yeah.
Like also in Austria, there's this thing called Go Student, which became one of the first, or one, I don't know if it's one of the first, but it's became a unicorn during the pandemic because you obviously couldn't go physically to any classes, and this app focuses on giving classes online.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
actually that's one thing. Yeah, I think Vienna, although we're talking a lot, there's this German aspect that you have in when it comes to government entities and when you go to the store, but they have a lot of investments when it comes to startups.
You think so?
I think so, no? At least from what I've seen, there's a lot of startups in Vienna.
I don't know how to compare it. Like, no, what about Copenhagen? Is it more or less than Copenhagen?
No, I think Copenhagen also has a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
But
probably it has more than Probably it has more than Brussels. I feel like Belgium doesn't have that much going for it in terms of startups. It does have a lot of corporates, but startups, like they go big, not really.
I feel in Vancouver was a lot of mini startups when it came to food and beverage.
Really?
So food, especially because there was a lot of like the new trends, like non-alcoholic drinks, no meat, sausages. So I feel in that sense they had a lot. But here in Vienna, like as you said, Go Student, the place that I work at, and Refer being another like more sustainably focused company.
Bitpanda, the crypto company.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's those four are the big famous ones that really blew up. Maybe I'm forgetting some.
Yeah, there was I think some jewelry ones as well.
Okay.
But wooden watches. I forgot what it's called, but
yeah, I've seen the ads on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know that was from Vienna.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think a recommendation for anybody who wants to move around easily, because startups have this mentality of taking risk and like growing, it's a great place to consider working to start your career.
So tell me about that move you made actually to decide to take a big salary cut to join a startup which probably you'd never heard of before leaving Canada, right?
Yeah. So we knew we wanted to move back to Europe, and initially we were looking into Sweden, but again the same situation with the visa, they weren't accepting it, whatever, because it's easier for you as a Swede if you bring someone to Sweden, then you have to go through like the Swedish law instead of the EU law.
Okay.
And then as a European, I can easily bring Cody to other places just because then we're going through EU law. And then there's like this deal where it makes it a lot easier. Anyways, so I knew I wanted to go, I was working in alcohol and I knew I still wanted to be in beverage, but not necessarily in alcoholic drinks, because I think with the pandemic, you also saw how much people were drinking, and I just thought I wanted to go somewhere where it's a little bit healthier and maybe more innovative, because I was also working a lot with like traditional marketing, which I love it, and I love my previous job. But
because you do marketing.
I do marketing. Yeah, so I'm a marketer. So I thought, okay, let's look into cool new companies, which are probably really feeding into the trends and really understanding like what the new consumer wants. And there was a couple companies that came from this article from Drink Insider, or Drink Business actually, and they mentioned Waterdrop as one of the companies to look into. So I was looking into like their jobs, and they didn't have anything in particular that was something I was craving to do, but it really caught my eye when it came to the company.
The product itself.
The product itself, the way that they were trying to express themselves throughout their website, as well on social media, and what other drink magazines were talking about them. So I reached out and was like, okay, this is what I used to do. This is what I'm hoping to do. Is there anything for me? And a couple of months passed by, there wasn't. And eventually, through conversations, they're like, well, what about this position? Which was more like on social media. So okay, let's do it. Let's take a risk. And also because I was already in interviews with other companies. And then we were with Cody as well. We needed to make sure that wherever we went, it also made sense for jobs for him.
Yeah.
Can't just be, because I found like a really, really cool job in A Coruña in Spain. But
that's like in Asturias or
like super north of Spain. Galicia. Yeah, Galicia. In like the north of Spain. But I mean, let's be fair, then it's going to be super hard for Cody to get a job. So you have to think about it as in a team. Okay, where does it make sense for both of us? And that's when we both thought, okay, we do have experience in Vienna. We know we have some friends. Like, we'll know it will be easy to integrate ourselves quickly. And we went into the companies, and I mean, it was an amazing experience. I do love working with the current company I'm working with. I think they've been really trusting and allowed me to take the direction I wanted to take with some of the projects I wanted to do. So I'm really grateful.
And they've been booming, right? Or
yeah.
I don't know the financials, but I do know that their stores have been popping up a lot. And I mean, the way you described it to me, it seems like one of these types of products that addresses sort of a general market trend of more towards health and going away from products like Coca-Cola and Pepsi and trying to get people to drink something that tastes the same but is healthy, with less I don't know, waste. Yeah,
that's, you got it. You described it perfectly. You can come and work.
That's just the way I understood it.
That's good. No, and I think that's one thing. I've always been into sustainability, so I wanted to make sure that the company I work with is, I mean, there's always so many jobs in other like, for example, tobacco or but it's not.
Which is booming now, by the way, because of all of these other products.
For the vaping.
Vapes.
I also don't understand why they don't go for it. In certain countries, for example, in Canada, when they legalize marijuana, they already have like certain in their industry, they have like certain instruments that they could also kind of like venture into that niche.
You mean like a vaping?
No, but like, I don't know. Well, I mean, that's for them to ask, to investigate. But yeah, I don't see myself in that kind of field.
Yeah.
I need to, because part of the marketing aspect is not just marketing in the product, but what facilitates me moving places is that I also feel passionate that I can easily market myself.
Yeah.
And if I would be working with something I don't necessarily believe or doesn't align with my ethics and values, it would be very hard for me to fake it. So I think I mean, I don't mind the salary cut for being in a startup and then all of a sudden like trying to figure out how to get to that salary again or where I wanted to be. And I'm happy that I got there. But in the case that, let's say we move and there's no job in the startup and there's no job in corporate or in an international organization that fits my visions and my values and my ethics, instead of going to something that doesn't align with that, I'd rather
take the cut.
I don't know, be a local cafe waitress, figure out a farm or something. Go, I don't know. Yeah, figure out how to do that, and while I stabilize myself, but at least my heart is still in peace.
Yeah,
and it's all part of like the story somehow.
Yeah.
So that's because it gives you more energy to then eventually go wherever you want to be.
I think at least Denmark and Sweden will be countries where they value these ESG trends as well, right?
It's like a mandatory next year.
To report.
Yeah.
But the EU is now potentially looking whether they still want to. I read something that it might be so much effort for many companies to do this report that they're wondering whether they should do it.
They should do it. No, because then comes with a penalty.
If you don't do it.
If you don't do it, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, this is the whole overregulation versus deregulation debate. Yeah, between the EU and companies. Yeah.
Maybe it should be really overly regulated, especially with companies that they know they're doing something bad. Let's say Coca-Cola. Like they should overly regulate.
Yeah. But the problem is in the EU, they probably do a lot less bad than in countries where there's absolutely no regulation. I like Mexico. I think some parts of Mexico, they drink more Coke than water, right? Like in Chiapas.
I think it's due to accessibility and
price.
Also, think about it, probably the company itself is taking advantage of this situation where they know there's like lack of accessibility, but they'll overinvest in order to make this the only possibility for the consumers in there to buy, which is sad.
Speaking of Mexico, Mexico City is one of the cities that you lived in 7 years.
Yeah.
Mexico City, since the pandemic, has become like a boom location for, I think, mostly Americans who decided to move there. How is the city as a place to live in, and what are the local people, aka your friends, reactions about how much the city has like exploded recently? Like when we were living there, I think it was like not a place that people per se move to en masse like now, and now they're all moving to these fancy districts. What are they called again?
Like Polanco, Roma, Condesa.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think we can put it in two aspects, because when we were living there in Mexico, I must admit that we were living a bit in a bubble with our family, and now
definitely
it's a lot of people are moving there due to the cost of living in their own country. So for when we're talking about more like in the expat community, and I think Mexico itself has always been a trampoline country. So anything that is successful in Mexico most likely will be successful in Latin America or in the US. So a lot of companies have realized that, and also like geography wise, it has great location because you do have still the North American market, but the Latin American market, I see why it has boomed. Also food wise, people,
great food, great
people, music. Mexico City has always been a bit
culture, very strong culture.
Colors. It's been a bit of a hidden gem, like a hidden. I feel like a lot of people.
It's been rediscovered somehow.
So it does.
By the US, actually, I feel like mostly rediscovered by the US now recently.
Maybe they start realizing they're disliking aspects of their own country, so they need to go to.
Could be.
But I would live again in Mexico myself. I would love it.
Mexico City,
of course. Mexico.
When you say Mexico, you mean I would live in Mexico City.
Mexico City, mostly because of the friends. But I was there in April and I fell in love again. It's just I don't know, there's something about it that has such welcoming feeling, and also people. I think that makes you can travel so much, but when you travel to Mexico City, this kind of like vibrant, happy atmosphere, it's hard to grasp anywhere else, and it's so easily felt in Mexico that if you're trying to speak Spanish there, it's like a lot of people are still like welcoming you to speak Spanish. It's not like when you go to here.
You speak perfect Spanish.
Yeah, I speak. Good
job. Good.
I didn't mean
Spanish.
I didn't mean it for me, but for other people. Like when you see, I don't know. I think one thing that a lot of my friends are saying is you can feel how
Your Mexican friends.
Yeah, Mexican friends, how it's feeling. It's getting, a lot of areas are getting gentrified, like heavily, and I think in particular, even with food, sometimes like not making it spicy, or the rent going like a little bit too high, in particular in these areas, since expats are willing to take, they still consider a lot cheaper from the US
or
cities
Vancouver.
or Vancouver, yeah. So they're willing to pay the cost. So there's a good and the bad from both aspects. Personally, because I speak Spanish, because of the roots, because of the friends, I do see myself living in the future for maybe a short time in Mexico.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself living in Mexico?
I've thought about it. The salaries are actually really not that bad. Like if you go into an American company in Mexico, because the Mexican peso is one of the few currencies that has been doing really well versus the dollar. I would, compared to the euro, for example, a lot, like let's say the European countries have sort of lost a lot relative to the dollar, whereas Mexican, like I would say, many of these Central American countries that work a lot with the US, they've all strengthened towards the dollar, and so their salaries have relatively towards the rest of the world gotten a lot better. Yeah.
Do you think it's because a lot of companies are starting to invest in Mexico as well?
I think that Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, these countries are perfect alternatives to China, especially Mexico. I mean, if the US wants, I know Trump keeps saying he's going to put a tariff on Mexico and Canada, et cetera, but at the end of the day, Canada and Mexico are allies of the US, right? And China is sort of now the country that Trump says he doesn't like. And so most of the products for the US are being built in China. If you just put 10 or 20% of those in Mexico, 20% in India, and 10% in Vietnam, I mean, that's going to be an explosion of growth for Mexico. And it's already happening.
Yeah.
It's called friendshoring, yeah, where you outsource it to a friendly country, which Mexico and the US have their little fights, but at the end of the day, they're really
tied in together.
And I mean, the US is now I believe the second largest Spanish-speaking country after Mexico. You know, more Spanish speakers than Spain and Colombia. Yeah, and whatever the other large Spanish. I think it's the second. I'm gonna have to check those. I know it's really high.
That is high.
So culturally, there's also a lot more of this mixing going on, you know, between both countries. Lots of Mexicans moved to the US in the past years, and now vice versa. Lots of Americans are moving to Mexico. Yeah. I think it's fair enough, you know. It can go both ways.
I'm excited to see how it goes, and I mean, as I said, like when I was back in April in Mexico, I fell in love all over again. I was already in love, but
the food is amazing.
Yeah, food.
Yeah, the one elephant in the room for Mexico, for me personally, is the security topic. Yeah. Unlike, I don't know about Vancouver, but Copenhagen and Vienna, I know that as a woman you can walk at night on your own at 3 a.m. Nothing's gonna happen to you. I mean, yes, there is a statistical chance that something might happen to you, but in general, you can walk on your own here at night. For sure. I don't think you can do that in Mexico City.
I think that's why, in a way, we were both living in a bit of a bubble when we were living in Mexico due to security reasons as well.
Yeah.
And I think if we do live in Mexico again, we might still be maybe not as an embedded bubble as we were with, like, when we were living with our parents.
Yeah.
But we'll still be in a bit of a bubble.
Yeah. I guess these expat contracts don't really exist anymore. Like these 90s, 2000s expat contracts.
I tried to explain it to my dad. My dad's like, why don't you get a contract like this? I was like, Dad, they don't exist anymore. I've tried. I've tried negotiating it everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, we would need like a local job, basically. That's how it works now.
Yeah.
just fair enough. I mean, the expat contracts were from a time where, let's say, American companies and European companies would always want to place their native people, let's say from the same country of the bank, in the high positions in wherever in Asia or wherever in Latin America. But there's so much talent there too, right?
I mean, now it's so easily accessible with the internet, and you don't need to have an in-person meeting anymore. You can just have a global virtual meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I understand that those expat contracts don't exist anymore. But unless you're like a diplomat.
Yeah. Or very, very high.
Yeah.
So Mexico, potentially move there. Anywhere else you would want to move in the future? Like anything in your hot list or short list of cities that you would want to live in?
I've always thought it would be cool to live somewhere in Asia. I've never been to Southeast Asia or China or Japan. And
you've never been at all?
No.
Like traveling?
No, but that's why we're going. We're going to go and travel now so we can see it. Those particular countries, I've never been there physically or traveled there.
They're very nice.
Yeah, I've always had focus so much in Latin America just because it always made me feel at home. But I'm so excited to see. And I am one of those people, like, if I fall in love with a city, I'm like, yeah, why not?
You're going to fall in love. It's the hecticness and the great food of Mexico, let's say.
Yeah.
With the security of Europe. Maybe even more secure. Like, if you compare it with, like, Paris and Brussels, it's not that secure, right? I mean, I think many of these cities in Southeast Asia are super safe.
I want to eat everything. I want to see everything. So yeah, we're gonna be doing a bit of traveling just to see.
Yeah.
I think that's the cool part is that you only have one life, so try to fill it as many ways as well. I see it if I move around different countries. It's like I've lived many different lives within one life. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get this sense that life is longer than it actually is.
I fully agree with that, and that's also something that I do less than you, but definitely try to live by that. I think one of the reasons is if you live for a long time somewhere, you sort of go in autopilot.
Yeah.
And time just flies by. I mean, look, you've been here for 3 years.
Yeah.
It's gone by so fast. To me, it seems like you've been here 1 year,
3 years. So crazy. Yeah, I mean, now we're borrowing your ladder again, as we did it to decorate our apartment, but now to put things
3 years
down.
ago. Yeah.
And also, I think the nice thing about meeting people from different parts of the world is that you don't have all the time to try to learn as much as you can from everywhere. But if you meet those people, it's like you get embedded into like that knowledge. It's like you're reading a book.
True.
So you're reading multiple books just by meeting all these people from all
that I hadn't thought about, but that's true. I guess it's like speed tapping into a cultural fountain,
Yeah.
Just by talking to someone, you absorb a lot of their upbringing, the way they do things. Yeah.
What they like, music.
Yeah.
Books.
Cultural norms of that country.
Films. I remember we were visiting our friend Parth in India. And we were at his hometown, and he's like, "Okay, let's watch all these Indian movies." And I didn't know like I love Bollywood so much until I started watching some of these films that he plays for us. And there was one called Lunchbox that really stuck to me, and I wouldn't have had that opportunity unless one, be open about new experiences, and then let someone else be the driver when you are in their culture. And two, just listen. It's like let the book. It's like a podcast, I guess, instead of a book. But yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for experiences like that in the future.
All right. Yeah. I think with those words, that's a good closer. So different locations as new chapters in the book of your life. You only live once, and second, meet a lot of people to tap into new cultural experiences and new cultures in general, and knowledge, ways of thinking. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ciao, ciao.